So what's going on, guys? DIY Dan here again, and this is another mechanical video. In this video, I actually had the check trailer wiring message going off in my display on my 2017 Chevy 2500 HD. Now this message has been going off on me intermittently, but not very often, for months now. Over the last 2 trips that I've taken, it has gotten progressively worse, to the point where on one of my trips it probably went off and on about 50 times. So I did end up replacing the factory OEM trailer brake controller to rectify the problem on my truck. However, I am going to quickly go over some other things that can cause this message to come up on your dash that you might want to check before replacing your trailer brake controller. So let's get to it. If you want to bypass the diagnostic aspect of this and go straight to the brake controller, it takes place at 4 minutes. So one of the key things that helped me diagnose the problem with my truck was the fact that I had this message coming up pulling 2 different trailers off of 2 different trailer pigtails in my truck. I have a single axle enclosed tow behind trailer with electric brakes that obviously I was using the pigtail off of my bumper. And then I also have a trailer pigtail in the bed of my truck when I haul my triple axle toy hauler. Now the fact that this message was coming up on my display in my truck pulling either one of these trailers definitely narrowed it down to the problem being in the truck itself and not the trailer. However, that didn't necessarily narrow it down to my electric brake controller yet. I could have still had a bad ground connection going to both of those trailer pigtails in my truck. An easy way to verify whether you have a good ground going to your trailer hookup on your vehicle is to take a voltmeter and put it on ohms and clamp it to the ground in the trailer hookup, and put the other line to a good ground on the chassis, and you should read 0 resistance. You can also, while these are hooked up, wiggle your harness behind your pigtail, and if it ever jumps around and goes to OL, then you have a bad ground going to your trailer. Some other things to look for is loose, broken, or bent spades on your trailer connector. This is the 7-way pin connector that is on my bumper of my truck, and you'll notice the one spade is not uniform with the rest. This could definitely cause a bad connection when your trailer pigtail is plugged into it. This was the 7-way pin connector coming off of my toy hauler. You'll notice how bad some of these connection points look, and therefore I ended up replacing that as well. So to the best of my knowledge, the only thing that's going to throw that check trailer wiring display on your dash is going to be a bad ground connection or possibly a short to ground from your trailer brake wiring. Another good thing to check is your trailer connectors inside, especially if they've been replaced, like the one I'm doing right here, because I have seen those wires come loose inside and either short out to each other or just not make a connection at all. And this goes for the truck and trailer hookups. So right here, I actually pulled the cover off of my junction box on my toy hauler, and I was checking the ground connection to the chassis of that trailer. It could end up being something as simple as a tech screw coming loose that's holding your ground to the trailer chassis, or possibly paint built up underneath the ground and it's just not making a good connection that you need to pull it off of there, clean it up, and put it back on. The other thing you might want to do is go underneath your trailer and look at your electric brake wiring to make sure there are no melted wires or bad ground connections. One of the common things I've seen is they usually run the electric brake wiring through the axles, and there's a little plastic clip that protects those wires from rubbing on the axle. Over time, those get brittle and will break away, and I have had those wires melt together inside the axle because the positive wire eventually wore through and shorted directly to the chassis ground of the trailer. So hopefully those tips helped you out with diagnosing your problem. Now let's get to switching out this electric brake controller in the truck. So I got this brake controller off of Amazon. Obviously you can go through the dealer as well. It came with the panel and it was right around $30. The panel that holds the electric brake controller is held in by body clips. So to remove the panel, you have to leverage it away from the other trim in the dash. I started by using a flathead screwdriver until I realized that I had scratched the other part of the trim. After realizing I had done that, I grabbed something a lot wider to give more surface area against that other trim, so hopefully it wouldn't damage it, and that worked out okay. After doing this project, I realized maybe an easy way to protect that other trim would have been to grab some painter's tape and just taped around it before trying to leverage this panel out of the truck. Once you got the panel off of the truck, then you will need to remove the 3 electrical harnesses that go to that panel. There's a plastic tab that you will need to depress on each one of those harnesses. As you depress that tab, then just pull on the harness and they should come out. Once removing this panel assembly from the truck, I did match it up to the new part to make sure everything was identical, because it's a lot easier to return something if they've seen that you haven't tried to install it. Once doing that, then you do have to remove 2 of the electrical switches from the old panel to put into this new panel. Once again, there is plastic tabs that hold these switches in position, and I had to leverage both of them open at the same time in order to get these switches to come out. This was a little tricky, and a second set of hands did come in handy. Basically what I ended up doing is prying the plastic tabs on the body panel away from the switch, at the same time putting a little tension on that switch by pulling on where the harness plugs into that switch. The switches will just push into the new body panel, and it will not let you put it the wrong way because there are detents that will only line up one direction. All you have to do is press it into place. Make sure you listen for that detent as it fully snaps into place. So even though 2 sets of hands can make it easier, you can leverage each side off one at a time, as long as you hold that tension on the switch to keep it from snapping back into position. Make sure you check for some of the body clips that they're not still stuck in the dash. I had to use a flathead screwdriver to leverage one of those up and out of the vehicle before installing the new panel. Once doing that, all you have to do is line up the new body clips with the recessed areas in the trim. Each one of the electrical connections does have a timing mark, so they will not let you put them on incorrectly. All you have to do is push those into place and make sure you listen for that detent on each one of those harnesses. Then just set that new panel in position and push on it to make sure those body clips go into place, and you should hear the detent on those as well. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and it gave you some good information. If so, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. The whole concept of my channel is to give you guys the most information in the least amount of time as possible, so I don't waste your time. And I hope to see you next time. Have a good one. Later.